What if the loudest person in the room is always the weakest? Picture this. You're in the middle of a heated argument. Your pulse quickens. Every word you speak feels like a shield. Every counterattack a weapon. You are not listening, only waiting for your turn to strike. And the other person? They're doing the same. Neither of you is seeking truth. You are fighting to win. But then, a voice from the past interrupts. Not to take sides, not to arm you with sharper words, but to remind you of a brutal truth. You have already lost. Epictetus would say that the moment you let anger dictate your actions, you are no longer in control. You have handed over your peace, your reason, your very power to someone else. True strength, the Stoics argued, is not found in shouting, proving, or overpowering. It is found in silence, in restraint, in the ability to stand firm like a rock in the storm. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best answer to anger is silence." Not because silence is weak, but because it is the ultimate display of power. When you no longer feel the need to defend yourself against every challenge, you become untouchable. You dictate your own responses, rather than being a slave to emotion. So what is this silent trick that gives you true power? And how can you use it to master not just arguments, but life itself? Let's uncover the Stoic wisdom behind the strength of silence. True power, the Stoic art of control and restraint. Let's talk about power, not the kind that comes from force or domination, but the quiet strength that separates the truly strong from the restless and reactive. Most people believe that power comes from winning arguments, proving others wrong, and asserting dominance in conversations. But the Stoics saw power differently. True power, they argued, is not found in words. It is found in control. Why do people argue? If you've ever been in a heated debate, you know how quickly emotions take over. Voices rise, tempers flare, and before you know it, you're no longer discussing ideas. You're fighting to win. But have you ever stopped to ask why? Why do we feel the need to argue? Epictetus would say that most conflicts are not about truth, but about attachment to identity. When someone challenges our beliefs, it feels like an attack on who we are. Admitting we are wrong feels like losing a part of ourselves. And so, instead of seeking wisdom, we seek to defend our ego. This is not strength, it is insecurity. Marcus Aurelius understood this well. He wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion. There is never any need to get worked up or to trouble your soul. The moment you feel the urge to react, to prove yourself, to dominate, the moment you let another person dictate your emotions, you have already surrendered your power." True mastery is not found in shouting louder, but in remaining unmoved. Too often, people mistake loudness for strength. They believe that the one who argues the hardest, who insists on being right, who dominates the conversation, is the one in control. But the Stoics knew better. True power is not in words, it is in restraint. It is the ability to impose your will on reality, not by force, but by remaining unmoved in the face of chaos. Imagine two individuals in a heated debate. One is loud, aggressive, desperate to be heard. The other, calm, composed, listening more than speaking. They do not waste energy on emotional outbursts. But when they do speak, their words are deliberate, well-timed, and shift the entire conversation. Who truly holds the power here? The one who dominates with noise, or the one who controls the moment with silence? Take the example of Cato the Younger, a Stoic who lived in the final days of the Roman Republic. He was surrounded by corruption, deceit, and endless political battles. Yet he never wasted his energy on petty arguments. When insulted, he did not respond. When provoked, he remained calm. His silence spoke louder than words. It revealed his unshakable strength. His enemies could rage and scheme, but they could never control him. That is real power. Seneca once said, "A sword never kills anyone. It is merely the tool in the killer's hand." The same applies to words. Arguments only have power over you if you let them. The Stoics believed that true strength comes from self-mastery, the ability to remain calm under fire, to let others argue while you stay still, composed, untouchable. At the end of the day, power is not about winning debates. It is about winning over yourself. When you no longer feel the need to react, when you're no longer controlled by ego or emotion, you become truly free. The strength of silence. Let's talk about silence, not as a retreat, but as a weapon of wisdom. The Stoics understood that silence, when used with intention, is far more powerful than any argument. It is not passivity, it is control. It is the ability to hold your ground without the need to prove anything. When you refuse to engage in meaningless disputes, you shift the balance of power. The other person, expecting resistance, is left unsettled. They reveal more, second-guess their words, and, in their discomfort, expose their own weaknesses. As Epictetus said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." Silence forces reflection. It creates space for truth to emerge. Consider a Roman general standing before his troops, listening. He does not speak until the perfect moment. When he finally does, his words carry weight, precision, and command. His authority is not built on loudness, but on presence. The same applies in life. Those who speak less but with purpose hold greater influence. Too often, people assume that the loudest voice in the room is the strongest. But true strength lies in restraint. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best answer to anger is silence, not out of weakness, but because silence unsettles, disarms, and ultimately controls." At the end of the day, power is not about winning arguments. It is about mastering the battlefield before the fight even begins. Silence is not the absence of power. It is its purest form. The most powerful people in history used this trick. Let's talk about power, not the kind that comes from shouting the loudest or winning every argument, but the kind that commands respect without a single wasted word. The Stoics understood that true strength is not found in force or dominance, but in control. Control over oneself, over emotions, and ultimately over the situation. Some of history's greatest minds wielded this silent power with precision, proving that restraint is often the most formidable weapon. Socrates never sought victory in debates through aggression. Instead, he used a technique so powerful that it continues to shape intellectual discussions today. He never needed to tell people they were wrong. He simply asked the right questions, forcing them to expose their own contradictions. Imagine an Athenian politician boasting that he is the wisest man in the city. Instead of outright challenging him, Socrates asks, "What is wisdom?" The politician, eager to prove his intellect, confidently defines it. But with each carefully placed question, his definition begins to unravel. By the end, the man once so sure of himself is left stammering, realizing he has no true grasp of the very concept he boasted about. Socrates understood a fundamental truth. People rarely accept what they are told, but they will always trust what they discover for themselves. The moment you try to force an idea onto someone, their ego resists. But if they arrive at the conclusion on their own, they embrace it. It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. Epictetus once said, "This is the essence of silent power, leading people to the truth without ever having to push them toward it." This principle is not limited to philosophy. It extends to leadership, strategy, and even warfare. A true leader does not engage in every argument, nor do they waste energy on proving themselves right. They listen, they observe, and they wait. And when they finally do speak, their words are deliberate, precise, and impossible to ignore. Marcus Aurelius understood this well when he wrote, "The best answer to anger is silence." Not because he lacked the ability to argue, but because he knew that true power is not in reacting. It is in dictating the conversation before it even begins. Consider a great general standing before his army. He does not involve himself in petty disputes. He does not argue over minor details. Instead, he conserves his energy, choosing his battles carefully. When he finally speaks, his words shape the course of war. This is the art of controlled conflict, not fighting to be right, but speaking only when it truly matters. Most people argue out of ego, desperate to prove themselves, but the wise argue with purpose, using silence as a weapon rather than letting words weaken them. This kind of power is not just philosophical, it is also deeply practical. Miyamoto Musashi, the undefeated samurai, lived by it on the battlefield. He won over 60 duels, but his greatest victories were not won with his sword, they were won with his mind. He knew that the best way to win a fight was to make sure it never happened. Before battle, he would use silence to unsettle his opponents, making them emotional, impatient, and reckless. His most famous duel was against Sasaki Kojiro, a master swordsman known for his deadly speed. Musashi arrived hours late, deliberately disrespecting Kojiro. Enraged, Kojiro entered the fight already defeated. His anger made him careless. Musashi, calm and composed, ended the duel in a single strike. This is the essence of Stoic power. The moment your opponent is controlled by emotion, they have already lost. Seneca once wrote, "He who angers you conquers you." Musashi never reacted. He dictated the reactions of others. At the end of the day, power is not about proving yourself in every battle. It is about choosing which battles are worth fighting. The strongest person is not the one who argues the loudest, but the one who no longer needs to argue at all. Silence, patience, and restraint. These are the true weapons of the wise. Why letting go of arguments makes you stronger? Let's talk about arguments. Why do we feel the need to prove ourselves, to fight back, to defend our ideas, even when the discussion is clearly going nowhere? Most people believe that arguments are about truth. They are not. Arguments are about power. The more you argue, the more you reveal about yourself, your insecurities, your emotional triggers, and most importantly, the fact that someone else is controlling your reaction. The Stoics understood this deeply. True power does not come from winning debates. It comes from mastering yourself so well that others fall into your influence without even realizing it. Think about the last time you were caught in an argument. Were you truly listening, or were you just waiting for your turn to speak? Most people do not enter discussions seeking wisdom. They seek validation. They argue not to discover truth, but to be seen as right. This is why so many debates turn hostile. As soon as someone challenges our beliefs, we feel personally attacked. But as Marcus Aurelius wrote, you always have the option of having no opinion. Silence is a choice. Restraint is a weapon. And the one who controls their emotions controls the entire interaction. The Stoics believed that engaging in every dispute is a sign of weakness. Epictetus taught that the moment you let another person provoke you, you have surrendered your power. Imagine a seasoned warrior facing an arrogant challenger. The challenger yells, taunts, desperate to pull the warrior into a fight. But the warrior stands still, unmoved. He does not react, because he knows the truth. His strength is not in proving himself, but in knowing that he does not need to. The most powerful figures in history did not waste time arguing with critics. They focused on their vision, ignored distractions, and let their actions speak louder than words. At the end of the day, the question is simple. Are you reacting emotionally, or are you in control? The moment you stop seeking validation, the moment you no longer feel the need to argue, you become untouchable. True power is silent. Science confirms what the Stoics knew about silence. Let's talk about silence, not as avoidance, but as a tool of power. The Stoics understood that true strength does not come from speaking the most, but from knowing when to remain still. Modern research confirms what ancient wisdom has long taught. The most influential people are not those who talk endlessly, but those who control the conversation without needing to dominate it. They do not interrupt. They do not over-explain. They choose their words carefully, making others lean in, hang on to every sentence, and feel the weight of every pause. Consider the greatest leaders in history. They rarely raised their voices, not because they lacked authority, but because they didn't need to. Their silence carried weight. Their restraint built an aura of control. Marcus Aurelius embodied this principle, leading Rome not with arrogance, but with quiet strength. He wrote, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself." This is the essence of power, not in forcing others to submit, but in commanding respect through discipline, patience, and the ability to stay unmoved in the face of chaos. Why does silence hold such power? Because human nature is drawn to certainty. People trust those who remain calm under pressure, who do not flinch at insults, who do not react to provocation. If someone attacks you and you react with anger, you've already lost. If someone questions you and you rush to defend yourself, you've surrendered control. But if you pause, observe, and respond only when necessary, you shift the entire dynamic in your favor. Epictetus warned, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. The one who remains composed is the one who dictates the outcome." This does not mean staying silent in every situation. It means choosing your battles wisely. Ask yourself, am I speaking because I have something valuable to say, or because my ego demands to be heard? Am I in control of my response, or am I being controlled by emotion? Is this argument worth my energy, or am I merely feeding my need to be right? The strongest people do not let others pull them into unnecessary conflict. They understand that silence, used correctly, is not weakness, it is strategy. At the end of the day, power is not in the words you speak, but in the silence before them. The pause that commands attention, the restraint that unsettles, the ability to hold back until the moment is right. That is the silent trick that gives you true power. When to speak, when to stay silent, the ultimate power. Let's talk about silence. It is a weapon, a strategy, a display of power. But does that mean you should always stay silent? The Stoics knew that true mastery is not in avoiding conflict altogether, but in knowing when to engage and when to hold back. If silence were the only path to strength, history's greatest thinkers, philosophers, warriors, revolutionaries would have remained unheard. Yet they spoke, they debated, they challenged the status quo. Their power did not come from endless arguments, nor from passive retreat. It came from control. Many misunderstand Stoicism as a philosophy of detachment, of withdrawing from struggle, but this was never its essence. The Stoics did not reject conflict, they saw it as a tool. Marcus Aurelius, a ruler burdened with constant battles, both literal and philosophical, understood that silence is powerful, but so is well-placed speech. He wrote, "If anyone can refute me, show me I'm making a mistake or looking at things from the wrong perspective, I'll gladly change. It's the truth I'm after." This is the mindset of someone who does not argue for ego, but for growth. Avoiding conflict completely is not wisdom. It is fear disguised as restraint. There is a difference between mastering conflict and running from it. The strongest minds do not seek pointless debates, but they do not flee from necessary ones either. Why do most people avoid arguments? Because they are uncomfortable. But discomfort breeds strength. Struggle is a crucible. It forces refinement. Imagine a warrior who never enters battle, a blade that is never tested against steel. Without resistance, the edge dulls. Without challenge, the mind weakens. Think of history's boldest thinkers. Galileo risked everything by challenging the Church's understanding of the universe. Socrates was sentenced to death for questioning conventional beliefs. Even Marcus Aurelius, despite being the most powerful man in Rome, did not silence those who opposed him. Instead, he engaged with reason, never with unnecessary emotion. Their strength did not come from arguing to be right. It came from questioning, from forcing the world to confront deeper truths. There is a critical difference between arguing to satisfy your ego and arguing to shape reality. Socrates never attacked others outright. He questioned them until their flawed reasoning collapsed on its own. His words were not weapons of destruction, but tools of revelation. A wise leader does not argue for validation. They argue for transformation. They do not fight to win debates. They fight to reshape the world according to their vision. So when should you speak? When the argument sharpens your thinking, when it reveals deeper truths, when it challenges you or others to grow, when it shifts power in your favor. But when should you remain silent? When you are merely defending your ego, when the other person is not open to change, when the conversation is a pointless emotional battle, when your silence itself is a power move. Engaging in every argument is a sign of weakness, but speaking with purpose, that is power. Seneca once said, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." Wisdom is knowing that not every fight is worth having, and not every battle is won with words. At the end of the day, the strongest person is not the one who always stays silent, nor the one who always speaks. It's the one who knows the difference. True power lies in mastering both. The 100-word challenge. Can you do it? Let's talk about choice. If you had to choose between never arguing again or mastering the art of influence through conflict, which would give you more power? Imagine this. You wake up one day and a voice tells you that from now on, you only have 100 words left to speak for the rest of your life. Every sentence, every word, suddenly carries weight. Would you waste them in a heated argument? Would you spend them trying to prove yourself to someone who isn't even listening? Or would you choose them carefully, like a warrior sharpening his final blade before battle? This is where real power lies. The Stoics understood something most people ignore. Words are currency. The more you spend them carelessly, the less valuable they become. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Don't waste time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Too many people believe power comes from endless debate, from proving themselves right, from making sure the last word is theirs. But in truth, Power belongs to the one who does not need to convince anyone. Now picture yourself in an argument. Your heart races. Your mind floods with comebacks, defenses, counterpoints. You are desperate to respond. But stop. Breathe. Ask yourself, who truly holds the power here? The one frantically trying to prove himself, or the one who remains still, unmoved, watching as the other person reveals their own weaknesses? Because silence is not weakness. It is strategy. It is control. It is the art of making others question themselves without you ever needing to convince them. Epictetus said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. The moment you react, you hand over control. But the moment you master the ability to hold back, to observe, to respond only when necessary, you become untouchable." At the end of the day, the challenge is simple. The next time you are about to argue, pause, watch. See how others expose their insecurities just by the way they speak. And when the time is right, choose your words like a master, or don't speak at all, because true power is silent. So here's the challenge. The next time you feel the urge to argue, pause. Do not react. Observe. Watch closely as the other person reveals more than they intend to. Their words will expose their fears, their insecurities, their need to be right. And in that moment, you will realize something powerful. You never needed to respond, because silence unsettles. Silence commands. Silence wins battles before they even begin. And when the time is right, if you must speak, choose your words with precision. Speak not to prove, but to guide. Speak not to argue, but to shape the world around you. Or don't speak at all, because sometimes the greatest power is found in restraint. Now, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below with "Silence wins battles" if you believe in the power of restraint. Have you ever won an argument without saying a word? Or have you ever regretted speaking when silence would have been stronger? Let's talk about it in the comments. If this message resonates with you, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a deep dive into the ideas that sharpen the mind and strengthen the soul. This is just the beginning. In the next video, we'll uncover another timeless principle that separates the wise from the weak. Until then, stay sharp, stay disciplined, and remember, true power is silent.